member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I asked a question several days ago on the Liberals' broken promise to eliminate the marriage after 60 clause. Veterans and RCMP retirees are reaching out to me because this issue is still not fixed. Just so Canadians understand, this clause was created in the early 1900s, and it prevents the spouses of veterans and RCMP retirees, as well as any federal public servant, from receiving a pension after the death of their partner if they marry after 60. This clause is a relic that should belong in a sexist history. It is still known under the name of the Gold Diggers Clause, as it was created to prevent young women from marrying older veterans to get their pension when they died. It is still in place today, Madam Speaker. How's that for a feminist government? It was wrong then, and it is wrong now. What we know is that veteran spouses in this category are often in poverty. In fact, some veterans stop taking part of their pension while they are living so that their spouses will have something when they die, which can mean veterans and their spouses live in poverty for years, so that if the spouse lives longer, they are not completely without an income. Fundamentally, the federal government is punishing veterans for marrying after 60. This is sexist as well as ageist. I know of one couple, for example, who were going to get married. COVID prevented the wedding from happening, and then the veteran turned 60. Now what do? Madam Speaker, the government's plan is to study this very small population of largely impoverished women so the government can find them. I appreciate the importance of studies. However, this small population is in desperate need. Veterans are worried about the future of their partners. In 2015 and 2017 mandate letters to the Ministers of Veterans Affairs, the PM was very clear and instructed the ministers to eliminate the marriage after 60 pension clawback. Sadly, this mandate was not found in the most recent 2019 or 2020 mandate letters. The Liberals promised to eliminate the clause in the 2019 campaign, but instead created the Veteran Survivors Fund in the 2019 budget, $150 million over 5 years. This funding was panned to many organizations, including the National Council of Veterans Associations, Armed Forces Pensioners, and RCMP Veterans Association. To date, not one penny of the fund has been spent. It is very clear this issue for a relatively small population is just not a priority for the government. They could eliminate this clause, have an application process for the spouses, and this issue would be resolved. But instead, the spouses of retired RCMP and veterans who married after 60 continue to remain poor. When will the government fix this? How long will it take? Madam Speaker, VAC has funded 2 studies on this issue. The first is through the Canadian Institute of Military and Veteran Health Research and was completed recently by the UBC professor, Dr. Eric Lai. In his executive summary, he states that he was only able to include 7 survivors and 3 veterans in his study. And even with that small sample size, the primary recommendation is that VAC reconsider the criteria for inheriting a veteran's pension. The second study is through Statistics Canada, which sent their preliminary results to VAC 1 month ago. The results were supposed to be made public by summer 2020, but now we're being told to wait till 2022. My question is this: was the government expecting the result of these studies to produce a result other than the need to eliminate the marriage after 60s clause? Because everyone, and I mean everyone, who is affected by this clause has called for the government simply to eliminate it. Even the Prime Minister wanted it to happen. So why the delay? Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Madam President, Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, the MP for North Island, Powell River, for her question and her excellent work, of course, on the AGVA committee that I serve as well. Je suis heureux aujourd'hui.
I am very pleased today to respond to this. I would like to start by specifying that the well-being of Canadian veterans and their families is a priority for our government. And, Madam Speaker, that includes the fact that the partners of veterans should receive a copy of pensions after their partner passes away.
After the veteran has turned 60 are not entitled to automatic survivor pensions under the Canadian Forced Superannuation Act. It's why in 2019, our government announced $150 million over 5 years to establish a Veteran Survivor Fund designated to, and I quote, better support veterans who marry over the age of 60 and their spouses. At the time of the announcement, Madam Speaker, no information was available on the population who married veterans after the veteran's 60th birthday. So the first phase of that funding commitment requires some research into the size, the characteristics, and needs of this population. As a result, Veteran Affairs undertook two research projects. One, a quantitative study with Statistics Canada to identify the population size and characteristics of survivors who married a veteran who was over 60. And the other, a qualitative study with the Canadian Institute of Military and Veterans Health Research to examine the financial well-being of these survivors to better understand the nature of their financial situation and what unmet needs they may have. Le ministère se sert des résultats de ces recherches.
The interpreter regrets, but the Parliamentary Secretary's microphone is not properly selected. Service will resume as soon as the proper microphone is selected.
Les conjoints des vétérans décédés à communiquer avec Ancien Canada combattants.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Ils éprouvent
Point of order.
des difficultés.
One moment, please. There's only points of order if there's a technical issue. Is there a technical issue? The honourable member for North Island Power River?
I'm so sorry to interrupt. The interpreters have identified that the wrong microphone is selected and they're having a hard time interpreting. That's the only reason I interrupted.
Okay, there was some questioning here, but we had checked, but we'll double check again. So the honourable member should maybe unplug and replug it in, or go to his microphone selection on the computer and make sure that it is plugged in. It is the right one selected. It looks like it may not have been plugged in. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe it's rectified at this time. Would you like me to restart or just the last two paragraphs?
I'm just double checking here whether the interpreters were able to interpret any part of that. Yes? Okay, so you can just continue. The honourable member can just continue.
Thank you. Le ministère se sert des résultats de...
The department uses the results of this research to determine the best way to support survivors. In the meantime, we encourage spouses of veterans who have passed away to communicate with Veterans Affairs if they have any difficulties after the loss of their spouse. Support could be offered to them immediately. Thank you.
The honourable member for North Island Power River.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the Parliamentary Secretary for his work on ACVA as well. I deeply respect the work, and I know that in our hearts, all of us want to see the very best for the veterans who have served our country. My response, Madam Speaker, is when is the money going to be spent? $150 million over 5 years. We've still not had any reports of a single cent spent. We have had spouses contact our office and ask about the Veteran Survivors Fund. In fact, when it was first announced, we had a huge amount of people contact our office asking what the application process would look like, wanting to identify who they are, the spouses that have not got enough resources, who married after 60 and are desperate for that. We also had veterans calling us who had married after 60 who wanted to know the process because they care about their partners and they want to know that after they're gone, that person will be taken care of. There is still no clear pathway for an application process. Our office is still waiting for answers, but more importantly, the spouses are waiting for answers. When will they get it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Le gouvernement a entrepris de faire en sorte.
The government has endeavored to ensure that the Surviving spouses of veterans married after the age of 60 receive the support they need when they lose their partner.
Once the research into this population is properly analyzed, the government will use the results to inform how best to support these individuals. Thank you, Madam Speaker.